Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of More for You, where today we're talking career happiness and real world readiness with my guest, youth speaker Kyle Grappone, who also happens to be author of a brand new book called To the Next Step. Kyle helps young people prepare for their future, but you will find in today's interview that this is timeless advice for people of every age. Listen in as we start. Well, hi, everyone. This is Maura Sweeney coming to you with my new friend, Kyle Grappone. Hi, Kyle. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. For those who are just being introduced to Kyle for the first time, I'm introducing Kyle to you tonight because I found you, Kyle, when I was going to be interviewed on some podcast somewhere. Before I go on anyone's podcast, I always do my research and I listen to prior shows. I want to get a feeling for what they're doing and what they're all about. And who did I get to listen to but you? And I thought, first of all, the content caught my eye, which is why I tuned in. And then I was listening into you and I thought, this guy has got some really good ideas. And so I reached out to you. And because I deal with the university marketplace a lot in terms of leadership and personal influence, and you were dealing with university and high school students and how they are going to be preparing for their future, I thought, this is a guy I want to get to know better. And then I learned you were going to publish a brand new book, and it just came out. So why don't you show it to everyone?
Sure. So I have it right here. I have a whole number of boxes of them because I ship most of them myself. And so this is my book, To the Next Step, which is basically a instruction manual, guidebook, so to speak, for high school and college students. And it basically takes high school and college students from the beginning of their education all the way into the real world, and really focuses on figuring out what type of person you want to become and figuring out what type of careers might line up with that person, what type of careers are going to bring you satisfaction and fulfillment, what's going to align with what you really want to do and what are you passionate about. And then it also gives you a lot of steps on how to network, because I really believe strongly in figuring out, what these jobs are like. You think you might want a job, you think you might want a career. If you pick a career, you might spend, 4 8 years in college focus on that career. You're going to spend a lot of money on that career. And you want to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. What is the day like? What is the hours like? What do you have to study in school? So, a lot of that's, we talk about that in the book, about, connecting with people and asking them questions. So, that's basically, it's a very easy read. It's only about 200 pages. I think it's very easy to digest. It's written as a conversation piece with a student, but I think any parent could read it as well and kind of understand, what it's like today for kids their age to be entering the real world and stuff. So,
this is so good. And I'm so glad that we're able to have this conversation, because we're obviously, a generation apart. Tell everybody how old you are.
So I'm 31.
Okay. And here's where I want to begin, because really you and I are dealing with the same thing. It's how do we help people move forward in life and plan a life that they enjoy, that feels prosperous for them personally, that keeps them having a great life and feels that they're in control rather than having their environment in control of them. That's a big piece about growing up and growing into adulthood and into professions. But tell everybody just a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this field and in this marketplace and niche.
Sure. So I've been out of college for about 10 years now, and I've been working mostly in marketing and project management positions. And I would say a few years in, I started to realize a few key things. And at the time, they were just kind of small revelations that never really became much. But one of the things I realized was that I myself wanted more out of a career. I wanted to do more than just sit at a desk. I wanted to be doing different things, have more freedom, and really kind of do something that helps people on some level. So that was kind of the first thing, and that was kind of building within me for a number of years. But one of the things that really stood out to me, I'd say probably 6 or 7 years after college, maybe even less, is that a lot of the people I was working with in these different jobs, and we're talking about people with different backgrounds, different races, religions, you name it, different ages, all seem to be very dissatisfied with their job. They seem to be very unhappy with the job they had, the life they had, and there seemed to be this constant theme of being anxious, being negative, being depressed, and really just wasting away throughout the week, constantly complaining about the week and waiting for it to be the weekend. And then as soon as the weekend's over, going back to complaining about how quick the weekend went.
All right. I love
Um,
that. Stop right there. And you know something? I hear everything you're saying. And do you realize that even though you're addressing high school and college age students, you are addressing humanity. You're addressing the worker, and you're addressing people that oftentimes find themselves in a box and realize that the box that they're in um, isn't such a good one. And that's really an observation that probably a lot of people say it every day. They complain, but they don't realize, okay, so I'm not happy. What can I do to get out of where I am, right? And so for you to say that you notice a lot of people were unhappy or waiting for the week to get over, and also after the weekend saying, oh my gosh, the weekend went by so quickly. I find people today, even at midlife, let's say they've been in the same career 10 years, 20 years, they are absolutely drowning in a state of ennui, despair, and that feeling of lack of, like the powerlessness.
mhm.
So I really like the fact, too, that you talk about happiness, because that's one of the focuses I like to put emphasis on, because if people are not happy in what they're doing, their productivity goes down, their creativity goes down, and usually their success factor goes down. So go in a little bit further. We were talking about some of the things that were bothering you about work. So what did you do from there?
So it was probably, I say it was almost 2 years ago now, probably right around this time where I said, okay, I said, I'm gonna try to figure this out. I said, I don't really know what I want to do next. And I dabbled in a few different things that never really took off. Like I got into photography a little bit. But I have too much respect for that industry. And I realized that if you're going to do photography, that's what you're going to do. It's not something you can do professionally on the side type of situation. And at least what I mean is you can't necessarily learn that skill in a short amount of time. That's something you have to constantly practice. But so I was interested in that. I was interested in a few things, but it all kind of kept going back to the same thing, which was I felt very strongly that students were not prepared for the next steps in life. And it's funny, when I say students are not prepared, I'm not saying it's because school didn't prepare them. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is that students don't know what's coming next in life. Chapter 1 of my book is called "What the Part of Life You Don't See Coming." I
Yeah,
mean,
tell us a little bit about that. What do you mean by that?
so when I say the part of life you don't see coming, and that it's almost my opening line in almost every keynote I do when I speak to high school and college students. And what I mean by that is that this part of life, being an adult, is so complex that you won't see it coming. You won't understand what's about to happen because you're going to be an adult and you're going to work full time. But those are just words, especially when you're a teenager and you're just trying to, quote unquote, survive high school or get through college. I don't think you really understand, hey, like there's this really big thing that's about to happen because not only are you going to be working 40 hours a week, which is something you've never done before, a lot of you are going to be sitting in one place, all the time, all day. So that's something to get used to. For the first time in your life, your paycheck kind of becomes something that's a want to have to a need to have. It's one thing when you have a job and you don't have a lot of bills, you can always say, even when it gets tough, you can say, well, I could quit this if I want. It's a very different mentality when you're in a job and things are not going well and you don't know where to go because you can't quit because you need that type of money. And I don't think people understand that happens very quickly because you become an adult and you get your own place and maybe you get married or you have student loans. We'll talk about student loans in a minute, but you have this debt that you have to pay. And it's just another part of being an adult and that you're not ready for. And another thing you're not ready for is what it means to be an adult. There's a lot of adult responsibilities that are tacked onto that. There's a lot of things you have to do, things you're responsible for, people you're responsible for. So it's just a matter of this world that you're going to be shoved into. And if you don't know what your job is going to be like, or you never took some time to care about it, if you didn't really take any time to understand the fundamentals of finances, you're going to have issues there. If you spent your whole life having your parents do everything for you, you're going to have issues there. So that's really what I mean by the part of life that you don't see coming.
Those are all very good points. And they really ring true because there's a certain emotional intelligence, social maturity. There's a whole different dimension that you step into when you're out of school, right? And so you kind of put them at the end point and then work them backwards, I gather, or help them prepare for whatever that end point's going to look like. And then my sense is, Kyle, that you're helping them to gear themselves and navigate that path so that they could end up being in the best possible position, knowing what's to come. Am I right?
Exactly.
Okay.
It really is about understanding this is what's coming and here's kind of how to prepare for it. But it's also understanding how to kind of change your mindset and have a mindset at an early age that, you know what, I care about my future. So I'm going to start looking at things just a little differently because you start to understand, you know, that, you know, for example, one of the things I talk about is I talk about the importance of having good grades to get into a college that, you know, that college will be able to help you with your career path. And, you know, when you look at it that way, you may be able to look at a class and be like, you know what, I don't like math, but I do like the idea of having control, and having better grades is going to help me have that control. Because, yeah, grades are not everything. I'm a strong believer that standardized testing and the grades we give out is only one way to kind of measure intelligence, but it is the way we do it. It is the game that has to be played right now. And I think that some students think to themselves, well, you know, I just need to graduate and that's it. And when you have that kind of sleeping through school mentality, that's the name of one of my keynotes, is you can sleep if you want to. I deliver it to college students, and you can sleep if you want to, because the crazy thing is that a lot of students think there's either two ways school can go as far as your grades and the outcome. You can either graduate and you're set, or you can fail out and that's it. There's no middle ground. And there's actually a super scary middle ground. And that middle ground is you get C's, maybe the occasional B, but mostly C's. You graduate on time, but when you go out into the real world, there's nothing on your resume, there's nothing in your past, there's nothing in your story. You didn't even build a story because you weren't putting in enough effort for anybody to look at you any differently than just average.
I
And
totally agree. And you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know what? I think that's part of the, like, we put people on certain paths or tracks, and then they look like everybody else in that track. And so you really have to start saying, what are some of my distinguishing characteristics? What are my life experiences that I could add to this? What are some of the best pieces of advice you could give to students? Like, let's say someone thinks they want to do something in their career. Let's choose a career and therefore choose a college program, and then talk about the advice you'd like to give to that student to help give them the best opportunity for a career when they get out.
Sure. Well, I would say even before they made those choices, they should be connecting with working professionals in that field. I think it's 2019. We have access to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn shows everybody's job. And I guarantee that if you find 10 people that are doing jobs that you want and you message all 10, you're going to get at least 3 back. There are a lot of people who, first of all, it's a proven fact that people enjoy talking about themselves. So if you
That's
ask
true.
somebody, what do you do for a living? What do you like? What don't you like? People love talking about themselves. And people do genuinely enjoy giving advice. Now, some people aren't going to answer you, and that's fine. But you want to be asking them questions. What is your day-to-day like? What did you have to go to school for? What is your schedule like? Because you may think that you want a job, but if that person comes back and says, hey, sometimes I got to pull out my laptop every Saturday and work a few hours, or, hey, you know, for the first few years, it's going to be really tough and you don't make any money, it may not be for you. You know, and if it's not an office job, you may think you want to do something like be a nurse, but you may find out what nurses really go through, and the fact that maybe you find out most nurses have to work, you know, their first few years overnights or whatever. And that you might not want to do that. You might not want to go through that. And if something like that's going to deter you, then you probably weren't that passionate about it in the first place. So that
Right.
would be
Some people don't find that out until it's too late, right? Until they finished a program and thought, wait a minute, this isn't what I like. So
exactly.
one of the first things you're saying is to go out, get on LinkedIn, and start to reach out to people that can give you some information and give you some insights. What else would you encourage students to do?
So I would say if you found a series of careers or some sort of a career field or a number of jobs, maybe just one job that you're interested in, and you've kind of talked to working professionals, you've networked with them in high school, you found a college that fits your needs, which is something we can talk about in a minute. But if you found that right college for you, which is like I said, another entire topic, but if you found that out and you go into college, there's a few things that you need to do right off the bat. First of all, you need to be dedicated to defining your own college experience, because society has done an absolutely terrible job of creating this almost myth of what college is. Because every single TV show and movie that's ever been created about college, all they ever do is party. And they're doing things that are not realistic, or they're doing things every single episode that maybe you do every once in a while to blow off steam. And the problem is that people go away to college and they think to themselves, oh, it's a party.
It's TV.
It's
It's
TV, it's
TV
a
land.
party. I have relatives who came before me who are telling me about all the wild things they did in college. Now I want to go and do those things. And the problem is, if you're stuck in a dorm room, there's always going to be people on that floor that are doing something more fun than you, because their schedules don't line up anymore. It's not like we're all going to class at the same time. So if somebody is in there and he's lucky enough to not have to go to class next day until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he's going to be up all night where you shouldn't be, because you have to be at class at 8. So you want to define your own college experience. You want to be very careful about the people you surround yourself with, because the problem is that some of those people you start freshman year with aren't going to make it through the first semester. They're going to fail out. It happens at every school. They can't
Right.
handle it. And the last thing you need is their bad habits affecting you, affecting your GPA. Understand that if you fail a class, you threw money down the toilet, and you got to retake that class. And if you retake a class, you have to pay for it again. So that's something that is, I always encourage students, and we have a whole chapter on that, the college experience, which is build your own college experience. Understand, why am I going to college? Because if the best answer you can give me to that question is, oh, I'm supposed to, then you need to stop and rethink the whole thing. Because college is way too time consuming, and it costs way too much money to do something because you're supposed to. But if you're in college and you know where you want to go, another thing I always tell people is, when you get that class schedule, create your own schedule and schedule yourself time to be in the library. Even if you don't have a test coming up, even if you don't think you have anything coming up, get yourself in a rhythm where if you have class from 10 to 12 and then another class from 2 to 4, get some lunch, and then every day, say it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're in the library for those 2 hours. If you can leave in the morning and not go back to the dorm at night the way people do when they work, that's going to be a huge benefit, because you're not going to be back in your room. You're not going to get distracted by stuff, but you're also building that habit of being in the library. You're not going to be rushing through your work. Maybe you can, here's an amazing idea. You can study what you just learned, even if you don't have a test right away. So you're not always just studying for a test. You're actually, absorbing the information you're learning, because hopefully you're taking classes that are going to help you in your career, so you can actually learn these things and use them, in your internships and whatnot. So that's really one of the big things I say. Another thing I say is to use that career center. Use the college advisors that you have, because there are people who are dedicated to finding you a job. But you want to make sure you're going there. You want to make sure you have the best resume possible. You have the best cover letter possible. You really just want to have this mindset in college that I know what person I want to become. I have an idea of what I want to be doing. I have this idea of these careers. What else am I doing? Because understand that if all you do is go to class and get decent grades, you will graduate, and it's like you just said, you will look like everybody else. Because to a hiring manager who's hiring entry-level positions, everybody looks the same on paper. It's
Right.
only when you get through the door. So you need to have something on there, and that's where, for example, internships come in.
You know what? Yes, and I agree with everything you're saying, because I've been on that other side where I've been that person hiring, and I'll tell you, this is my style. I would pick out someone who had something unique about themselves. I would pick out an individual who showed me some personal sense of responsibility, who learned maybe from tough times, who learned to overcome certain things, and who were scrappy. Those are the kinds of things I'd be looking for. But then again, oftentimes I was hiring people that I wanted to grow and expand over time, rather than someone who just wanted to be told what to do. I have a question for you, Kyle, since your book is a compendium not only of your experiences and your research, but also from hundreds of conversations and interviews that you've done with others. What do you think, if anything, about the idea of a gap year in between high school and college, or midway through college? Have you given any thought to it, and have you ever found that to be of an advantage to a student who's preparing for their future career?
It's interesting. A gap year does not come up in a lot of the conversations I have. When people talk about their regrets, the gap year doesn't come up. So I don't necessarily talk about it too much. It's something that I think I'm a little biased against it because I sometimes feel like if you've built momentum in high school, um, and you've built this mindset in your head that you're going to class and you're learning and you're becoming this person. Now all of a sudden you're taking a year off. It might be very tempting not to go back.
Could
Um,
be. Yeah.
it could be very tempting to get a job because remember, if you're living at home with no bills and all of a sudden, you find yourself in a full-time job making $20 an hour, in the real world, $20 an hour, not a ton of money. 18 years old with no bills, that's a good amount of money. So you might be very tempted to kind of stay and do that.
Okay.
I think if you're going to take a gap year, I would really challenge you to figure out why. Um,
Exactly.
you
Why
know,
and also what? What would you like to do during that gap year? Because I travel a lot and I'm with students from different countries. I also know in other countries, a gap year is also part of the building process. In other words, is there an internship that you could do during that gap year? Can you actually do something in a field that you think you might be interested in to see if it's something you want to continue with? So I just wanted to have your feelings on that because sometimes people go right forward with an education and with the expenses, but may not have anything in mind that they want to do when they get out. And when they get out, they have a lot of expenses to pay with student loans, but not necessarily a picture in mind. Now, a couple of things here that I picked up in looking at your website. One of the students that heard from you speak at St. Mary's College said, Kyle stressed that happiness should be your biggest priority. She was a freshman, this woman that was writing, or this young girl. And she said you really introduced her as a freshman to things she hadn't thought about. But that was interesting. Talk a little bit about happiness.
sure. So it's actually interesting that she said that because I understand where she's coming from, but I don't really use the word happy when I talk about work all that much because I don't necessarily expect people to be, happy all the time. I think
Did you use the
to
word passion?
I use the word passion, and I
I
use a
see.
lot of fulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
satisfaction, and impact. Because I think even if you have a rough day, if you come home knowing you've made the difference you want to make, I think that that's really important. When I talk about being happy, I talk about creating a life that you'll enjoy, creating a life that has a job that not every day is so great, but at least you're doing something on your terms. You're doing something that you are passionate about. You took the time to discover that I am passionate about, whether it be helping a certain group of people, whether it be working in a certain industry.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're just happy because you realize that you didn't want an office job, so now you're doing something else. Maybe you realize that you'll be happier if you can be home when your kids are home from school. So maybe you have that 6 to 2 job instead. You know what I mean? Just
I do. And I figured that was exactly where you were going. She referred to it as happiness, that she probably saw it that way or translated it that way in her own world. But what she understood from your speaking is that she needs to come up with something that will speak to her internals. And everybody, there are some people I've worked for that are literal work machines and they don't like even taking weekends off, that their whole lives revolve around this idea of the pursuit of work, where other people may have other outlets. And so the whole idea behind it is, what kind of a person am I? What moves me? What gives me a sense of purpose? What are those kinds of things that I'm so passionate about learning about or contributing to? Because when you can do that, you end up giving yourself a sense of energy and direction. And even when things are challenging, because you have a passion in those areas, you will continue working forward. But if you have no passion and no interest, then your success and even your commitment to something really goes down. And you could be a young person feeling like an old person or feeling washed up after a very short period of time. And so, with that in mind, since I know you have a chapter on that, how do you best advise young people to actually tune into their passions? Would it be through getting in touch with people in industries that they think they want to go into? Would it be looking for internships?
So what I do is this is basically the fundamentals or basically the foundation of what I speak about.
Mhm.
Because when I talk to kids or I talk to students, excuse me, I don't like calling them kids. I like students
Mhm.
because that's what they are. But when I talk to students, I really talk about the fact that, a lot of people are very unhappy with their jobs, but it's confusing as to why, because they knew that it was coming. Everybody knows that they have to get a job someday. They have to get a career. So I always ask, I said, how is it that so many people were so unprepared for something they were told their whole lives was on its way? And the reason for that is because we've asked kids, students, the same question, which is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Instead of, what do you ask people?
So I said, instead of asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because it's a flawed question because you don't know the options yet. You don't know the answers. I mean, asking a 5, 10, 15-year-old that question is like asking you or me, what do you want for dinner without telling us what the options are. So we're just going to end up taking a guess and hoping that what we ordered tastes good from the place that we ordered it from. So instead, I ask students, what type of person do you want to become?
Now elaborate on that. Give me some potential scenarios on what kind of a person you want to become.
Sure. So I always challenge students to figure out, what type of person do you want to become in this world? What type of impact do you want to have? What do you do on a daily basis, or what are you about that makes you satisfied, that makes you fulfilled? What kind of outcomes make you happy? In a sense, I guess you could use the word there. And one of the biggest things I say is that if you've grown up and you've always been a problem solver, and you've always been somebody who helps people, somebody who gives advice to people, and that makes you feel really good and you feel fulfilled when you can solve people's problems, well, then you should become the type of person who helps people. And for first step, that's it. You already did it. You're going to be the type of person who helps people. And from here on out, anytime you make a decision, anytime you have to choose something, you're always making it with that person in mind. Because now you're thinking to yourself, I want to be this person who helps people. I want everything I do to be revolve around helping people. And I want a life that I can look back on someday and say, I did a lot of great things, and it was all in the name of helping other people do whatever. So
Hold that thought right there, because I love it. And Kyle, I so agree with you, because think about, if you know what kind of a person you want to be, and in this case, helping other people, that idea of helping other people could find an outlet in a number of different industries and a number of occupations. But it's a key question to ask yourself when going in those directions. Is there something in this capacity that allows me to be that kind of a person I want to be, namely somebody who wants to help people? Can I relate it now back to you? You were working in marketing, right? This is marketing, okay, in various capacities with that. If you had to ask yourself that question several years ago, what kind of a person do I want to be? How would you have answered it?
I would have said that I want to be the type of person who helps people, but also the type of person who entertains people. I'm very much somebody who likes to entertain, who likes to keep people, satisfied and not necessarily laughing, but just kind of engaged. So I would have been the type of person who, entertains people, and somebody who's very creative. And I think that if I would have done the proper research, I would have realized what life in a cubicle was like. And I would have realized that me personally, it's not really for me. Now I have a job now and I like it very much, but, I'm just not somebody who necessarily wants to work in a cube in a very rigid structure. And I'm not saying that that's the case for everybody. Like, I see a lot of things online.
Some people love it.
Exactly. Like, I see,
they like the structure, right?
yeah, like I see a lot of terrible things online that are like, oh, like you shouldn't work 9 to 5, you should work for yourself, blah, blah, blah. I said, no. That's not necessarily the case. I was like, there's all walks of life. I was like, and you can do a lot of great work, working in an office, working a 9 to 5. But, for me, one individual, that's not really what it is. And, I always look back on, I probably should have become a journalism major, and I probably should have taken creative writing, and I'd probably be working in a newsroom right now, or I'd be a reporter. But I didn't do that because I didn't take the time to self-discover. But it is funny because if I had listened to myself back then, I never would have done these jobs now, and I never would have became the speaker that I am. Because if I never worked in an office, I never would have discovered that this was an issue, and I never would have done any of these things.
So really, you take a lot of that. And I know that was one of the things I noticed, that when you speak to students, you'll share some of your own path and some of your own mistakes, which really makes you more relatable. People who've heard me speak know that one of the reasons why I do focus in on what is your inner GPS toward happiness telling you? Is it like, yeah, this is an area I want to be in because I feel uplifted and I feel like I could contribute and it feels meaningful and I feel passionate about it? versus those that make me feel like a total energy drain was because I was brought up to be an attorney. And I was doing everything I was told. I was going through all the processes, and I found myself halfway through law school at age 23, like the walking dead, because all I could see in front of me was a 40-year career dealing with law books in a capacity that I really had no desire to pursue. And it took away all of my creativity. And I was designed to be a creative, and I needed to be way outside the box. But that very fact that I went through that journey that made me realize it wasn't working for me really was my catalyst to finding out those things that I love to do, which is putting people together and creating great atmospheres and training and affecting and influencing and creating new cultures. Now, let's relate that to what you're currently doing today as a speaker. Tell me one of the biggest, either I could say the biggest thrills or the most satisfying aspects of what you do as a workshop leader, a keynoter, just a helper of young people in terms of preparing for their future. What are some of the things you're getting out of it today that make you feel really good?
I mean, one of the things I get out of it is when I spoke at a college last September, and I ended up gathering some emails from some students and having some correspondence with them. And I emailed a few of them the other day to let them know the book was out, just the ones who had shown some interest in the book when it was being written. And one student actually bought a book pretty quickly, and she wrote me back and she said, I had a bit of a tough year, but I always remembered what you talked about, and I kind of kept that in my head. And I learned a lot about myself and a lot about my future by putting the things you said in place. And for me, I mean, the whole school year was a victory because I changed, not that person's life, that's a bit extreme, but, I was able to touch at least that one person. So for me, I think if I can help one person every time I talk, if I can change somebody's mindset, if I can change somebody's trajectory, because yeah, it might be one person who's leading a better life, but for that person, that's the only one that matters. So I think that's a lot of the joy that I get out of it, is helping young kids to realize, like, hey, like, you know what, like maybe I should be doing this, or hey, like here's some very easy, because the advice I give in the book, I think is very easy to follow. I don't think it's too difficult to do any of the things. I just think that you need somebody who, isn't a teacher. And what I mean by that is that they're not hearing me every day. They're not, I'm not a parent, I'm not a teacher. I'm just somebody who, could have just had a very lucrative career in marketing and called it a day, and instead decided to, take this much more difficult path. So I think that's a lot of what I get out of it. And it's also just a feeling of satisfaction.
All right, Kyle, you're on your own entrepreneurial journey in a sense, because you have your day job, but you're also creating this whole new niche for yourself. And really, it's a project to help young people across America. What is something in this journey that you've discovered about yourself or about what you're doing that you hadn't anticipated?
So I think there's two main things. I'll start with a negative and then I'll end with a positive. There's one thing I tell students that I've encountered in my own journey so far, and that is this. When you have the audacity to follow your dreams in any capacity, you will awaken something in other people that reminds them that they were too afraid to chase theirs. And that's my quote. That's not anybody else's. At least I really hope it's not, because it's my quote. Excuse me. And what I mean by that is that I think a lot of people have some sort of quote unquote dream inside them, some sort of passion inside them. And maybe it's really simple. Maybe instead of working job A, they just want to be working job B instead. I think a lot of people want to do things that are a little scary, whether it be start their own business, start their own company, create something, write something. And I think the problem is that these people they don't jump. They don't do it. They don't just say, I'm going to go for it like I did. And again, like I'm constantly jumping and I'm constantly reassessing. And sometimes I get very scared about things that I'm doing or committing to. But I know in myself that I'd rather go for it and whatever happens, happens, compared to if I don't go for it, you're going to live the rest of your life wondering what if. And that to me would drive me nuts. But going back to what I said, the reason, you will awaken that in some people, and some people are not going to necessarily be very happy for you. I think that there are some people who will necessarily, they'll be nice to your face, and then maybe they'll throw you a like on Facebook every once in a while, but they're not really going to be that thrilled because, and I saw, this is somebody else's quote, this is not mine, but I saw something on Instagram a couple weeks ago that said, the reason strangers will be happier for you than your friends is because your friends started exactly where you started. And what that means is that you and your friends started at the same place. And now that you've risen up and they haven't, they're going to take that personally. Not the some, not all. I mean, I would say that almost all of my family and friends have been super supportive. But there are people that I've noticed very subtly, try to maybe bring me down a little bit, or maybe don't necessarily communicate with me as much anymore. Or people that I know see my stuff online but don't really want to help out. And I think it's because, there's some sort of anger there. I think they're more angry at themselves. So what I do is I take that and I translate it into my talks, and I tell students that if you have the audacity to do something that's just a little different, whether it be start something or pursue a career that not a lot of people do, um, or maybe you're the first person in your family to not become a doctor, become a lawyer, become whatever, you're going to have people that are going to resent you for it because you're doing what they wish they had the guts to do. You can't always get everybody's acceptance. You can't get everybody's happiness. I mean, I spoke not too long ago at a high school, and I thought it went very well. And I received a necessarily not very nice message from somebody associated with that high school. And I just chalked it up to, I hit a nerve with them because I was doing more than, I was doing something that I wanted to do. And I don't think that person was doing what they wanted to do with their life, and I think I hit a nerve with them. So I just let it go because I knew that, the more this becomes, the bigger this becomes when more products launch and more services launch, and I said to myself, I said, when the day comes that you walk out of that cubicle and never look back, every other person that's working in a cubicle that doesn't want to be working in a cubicle, they're not going to be very happy about that. So I always tell people that it's your life. You have to live it every single day. You have to get up every day and live that life. You have to look at yourself in the mirror. You have to get up at a certain time. You have to do this. You have to do that. So it's your life. Other people are going to have well-intentioned advice, but you're the one that has to live it. So if you know that there's something you don't want to do, don't do it. And if somebody's going to be mad for a little bit, then so be it. So that's one thing that I don't think I was really prepared for, but I'm glad I encountered it because now I know that other people will as well. And I think one positive is that I learned so much more about myself in the last couple of years and realizing that, I do have an interest in things. I do have a passion in things. I realized that the reason I wasn't always so amped to go to work had nothing to do with being lazy. It just had something to do with the fact that I just wasn't that excited about it because there was something else to be excited about. I'm much more organized. I'm much more passionate about things. And now I realize that I have, a purpose, and I am somebody who can write a book, which is not an easy task. I mean, it's funny, I forgot, I was thinking about something. I was like, well, I was in this place a year ago. I was like, and I was starting to think to myself, I was like, well, I'm still not doing this. I'm still not doing that. And I almost said, well, I guess a lot hasn't changed. And then I had to stop myself. And I said, you wrote and published a book in this past year. Like
that's a huge undertaking.
Like that,
and the
it
thing
might
is,
be
you put
done,
your
but
name on it. Yeah. That's
so
a
it was
huge undertaking.
But I almost forgot. And it's crazy because it took up so much of my life the last 9 months, but I almost forgot. I almost said, I guess this year wasn't that great. And I said, no, you actually wrote a book and you got it published and you're selling it now. So there's a quote by, I can't remember his name, but it goes, life is based less than you think about what you've learned and more than you think about what you had inside you straight from the start, which basically means that in life, it's not always about what the new stuff you've learned. It's about discovering what you already have inside you. So I don't think people have to learn about what they're passionate about. I just think it's already building inside of them. I just think they have to find ways to discover it. And I will say about when it comes to passion, I'm seeing a lot of clickbait articles lately about don't follow your passions, about do what you love is terrible advice, and all this other nonsense. And I would say that those are the type of clickbait articles you just need to move on from. The people who write those don't really even believe in what they're writing. They're just being told by an editor, hey, we need more eyeballs, so write something that's going to get clicks. I always tell, because there are people who will send me articles that contradict what I'm saying. And I don't know why they send them to me. But I say, you know what? I said, first of all, if you think that this is related to what I'm doing, then you're not really reading what I'm doing. But, sometimes you'll see, articles that say, well, don't do what you love is lousy advice, or, it's not about being passionate or whatever. And I always disagree with that because, like I said, you have to live this life. So there's something in the working world that is going to bring you fulfillment and is going to let you live life on your own terms. So,
Colin, I so agree with you on that. As we could do that, if we could find those things we are truly passionate about, things that we have within us that we can really exercise and grow with and feel like we've accomplished something, it gives us a much fuller and more robust life experience. And there will always be people who choose to live smaller because you have to face it, there's a lot of fear and a lot of risk that goes along. Now, sometimes it's financially, sometimes it is career-wise, and sometimes it's with the ego, right? Maybe I'm not going to do well, so therefore I won't even try it. But for those who go forward and do it, they not only are doing what everybody else is doing, but they're doing something that their heart really is fully into. And it gives us a more robust experience in life, and not everyone's willing to go there. And it doesn't even make a difference where they come from or what the environment is, but that's part of the human experience, that some people will stay back and others will say, here's my one life, I want to live it, and I want to live it well, even if it means I need to jump to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, very good. All right, Kyle, show us your book again one more time and let people know where they can find you.
Sure. So this is the book. It's available in the print version and it's available in the digital version. I would highly suggest that anyone who's interested go to my website, which will throw in either the show notes or the YouTube notes or whatever we have. But it's my website, so it's my name, which is KYLEGRAPPONE.com/book. Again, we'll share the link. And it basically gives you an overview of the book, and you can buy it in print or digital. If you buy it off of my website, which I think at the moment is the only way to buy it, so I would highly suggest this over Amazon because it's cheaper on my website, and I'll also autograph it for you.
Very good. And the thing is, Kyle, I know you're extremely practical. You're right there with the marketplace, and it's something that I think students now more than ever could really benefit by. It's almost like taking a life experience and shortening the path to get where they want to go. So thank you, and best of luck to you with the book, with everything else you're doing, and most of all with helping students really navigate their way to the next step. So thanks.
Thank you.